Elia Martell, who gave you the order? Who gave you the order? Say her name!
The final fight between Oberyn Martell and the Mountain is one of the most shocking moments in Game of Thrones. But once the initial shock wears off, questions begin to arise. Why was Oberyn so desperate for Gregor Clegane to confess who gave the order? He was literally pointing at Tywin Lannister, demanding the Mountain to say his name. Why was he so sure that Tywin intentionally gave the order? After all, Tywin had recently assured that he had nothing to do with it.
Men at war commit all kinds of crimes without their superiors' knowledge.
So you deny involvement in Elia's murder?
Categorically.
Moreover, if it was all about revenge, why did Oberyn wait 17 years? Why didn't he deal with Gregor earlier? Furthermore, why even engage in a fight against one of the strongest and most dangerous fighters in Westeros?
You're going to fight that?
I'm going to kill that.
He could have reached Gregor Clegane in another way. After all, he could have captured and interrogated him, so why choose this path? If you rely solely on the series, it seems that Oberyn was just too overconfident, emotional, and perhaps even slightly foolish.
Today is not the day I die.
But if you look into George Martin's books, you can notice a number of interesting details that allow for several hypotheses that would explain everything, which is what we'll do in this video. We'll figure out who Prince Oberyn really was, and consider an intriguing fan theory that reveals what his actual plan was. Before getting to the heart of the matter, it's worth understanding the origins of the Oberyn Martell and Tywin Lannister conflict. Their feud lasted for decades. It all started with Tywin's humiliation. Lannister planned to marry his daughter Cersei to the heir to the throne, Rhaegar Targaryen. He saw this not just as a successful alliance, but as a way to finally establish the Lannisters as the ruling dynasty. Cersei knew about these plans and, upon seeing Rhaegar at a tournament, immediately fell in love with the 17-year-old prince. After the tournament, an official announcement of Rhaegar and Cersei's engagement was expected. But that didn't happen. Instead, King Aerys II rejected Tywin's proposal, stating that he would never marry the heir to the Iron Throne to the daughter of his servant. For Tywin, this was a public insult. Moreover, instead of Cersei, Rhaegar married Elia Martell, the Princess of Dorne. In Tywin's eyes, this seemed like a sign that the Targaryen dynasty had chosen Dorne as its key ally, leaving the Lannisters out. This became one of the reasons for his dislike of the Dornish. When Robert Baratheon's rebellion began, Dorne did not support it, which was logical since Elia Martell was Rhaegar's wife. While the other great houses opposed the king, Dorne remained loyal to the dynasty. However, after Rhaegar's defeat at the Battle of the Trident, the war was essentially lost. And it was at this moment that Tywin Lannister entered the game. Arriving at the city with a large army, he claimed to have come to protect the capital from Baratheon. But when the gates were opened, his army conducted a barbaric purge. One of the victims was Elia Martell and her children. For the new king, Robert Baratheon, it was important that the Targaryen dynasty had no claimants to the Iron Throne. Dorne was furious, but in the new reality where Robert and the Lannisters were in power, they could only suppress their indignation. Officially, what happened was called a tragic necessity, and Tywin remained untouchable. For Prince Doran Martell, this blow was painful, but he chose the path of diplomacy. He understood that a new war would change nothing, but his younger brother Oberyn did not share this position. He was convinced that Tywin was responsible for his sister's death and that he should be punished. Years passed, and the situation unexpectedly changed. After the deaths of Robert and then Ned Stark, King's Landing plunged into chaos again. Tywin Lannister, trying to strengthen the alliance with Doran, invited Prince Doran to the wedding of Joffrey Baratheon and Margaery Tyrell. However, Doran preferred to send his brother Oberyn instead. We've sorted out the reasons for Oberyn's hatred of Tywin, But still, where does such confidence come from that it was Tywin who gave the order?
Who gave you the order? Who gave you the order? Say her name!
Why did Oberyn not even consider the possibility that it could have happened accidentally? That his subordinates simply overdid it, and Tywin decided to take advantage of it post-factum and present the bodies to Robert Baratheon? In fact, if you refer to the books, there are details that hint that Oberyn might have received information from other sources. The fact is, in the books, Gregor Clegane was not the only one who ended up in Oberyn Martell's chambers on that fateful day. Along with him was another person, Amory Lorch, just as deranged as Gregor Clegane, a knight of Tywin. And after some time, Amory, unfortunately for him, was captured by a mercenary group called the Brave Companions. Their reputation was, to put it mildly, bad. So much so that they were also called the Bloody Mummers. And interestingly, this group originated from the Free Cities, where Oberyn Martell also spent a long time as a mercenary.
You seem quite knowledgeable about the Unsullied. Did you spend much time in Essos? 5 years.
Therefore, it can be assumed that someone from this group, which also included Dornishmen, like Timett, son of Timett, had connections with Oberyn Martell. Amory Lorch did not survive his encounter with the Bloody Mummers. He was fed to a bear by their commander. But before that, he could have been interrogated. And if someone knew he was involved in the attack on Oberyn Martell, they surely tried to extract information from him to sell it to Dorne. Thus, it is quite possible that Oberyn knew the truth, not just from rumors, but from specific sources. It's important to note that this moment is only in George Martin's books. In the series, things are slightly different. There is another person who could have passed on such information. At some point, Qyburn was also listed as a healer in this group. Yes, the same one who later became Cersei's right hand. And Qyburn, in turn, studied at the Citadel, just like Oberyn. Thus, it is most likely that Tywin did indeed give such an order. Firstly, he could have held a grudge against Dorne since the humiliating marriage refusal with his daughter. And secondly, he wanted to show King Robert his utmost loyalty, and the elimination of the throne's heirs along with their mother is quite understandable. The bodies were wrapped in Lannister banners and presented to Robert. Everyone knew about this, as directly stated in the series. With Tywin Lannister, things are more or less clear. But what was Oberyn counting on? Did he really think he could extract a confession from the mountain and that it would change anything? It's much more complex and interesting. There are serious reasons to believe that Oberyn was playing his own game and was not as overconfident and impulsive as it might seem at first glance. Oberyn knew what he was doing. Let's look at his fight with Gregor Clegane. Why did Oberyn face him, knowing how dangerous the mountain is? Why didn't he try to eliminate him in some other way? It's important to remember that Oberyn was a master of poisons.
I hear you studied poisons at the Citadel.
I did.
Therefore, the answer is simple. His spear was poisoned. The series doesn't mention this, but the books have almost direct confirmation. Oberyn hints at this to Tyrion in a conversation before the duel. He wasn't just relying on agility and speed. He only needed to inflict even a small wound for the mountain to be doomed. This explains his fighting style. Oberyn chose light armor, allowing him to move as quickly as possible. And his weapon was a long spear. Gregor, on the other hand, was clad in heavy armor and used a massive two-handed sword. Oberyn understood perfectly well that in a direct power confrontation, he had no chance. So his tactic was simple. Keep his distance, strike, and wait for the poison to take effect. Why was Oberyn so insistent on the mountain naming Tywin? He probably wasn't counting on justice. Rather, he wanted to publicly discredit the Lannisters' name. To ensure that the truth about his sisters' and nephew's deaths became known throughout Westeros. And as for justice, he most likely planned to carry it out himself.
And tell him the Lannisters aren't the only ones who pay their debts.
The series doesn't show this, but if you look into the books, you can find indirect hints that Tywin Lannister might have been poisoned even before he was shot by Tyrion. In the world of Game of Thrones, there is a deadly poison called widow's blood. Its effect is quite harsh. It blocks the intestines and bladder, causing a person to die slowly, poisoning themselves with their own toxins. After Tywin's death, everyone noted that his body began to decompose much faster than others, which could be a sign that something was already wrong with Tywin. Moreover, Tyrion found his father in the privy.
Tyrion, this is how you want to speak to me? Shaming your father has always given you pleasure.
It seemed like a random detail, but it's possible that Martin was hinting at a bowel problem characteristic of widow's blood poisoning. It was the Red Viper, Oberyn, the master of poisons, who had both the knowledge and the motive. Who could have planted the poison is anyone's guess. But one might recall, for example, Shae, who somehow ended up in Tywin's chambers. Yes, her behavior at the trial was strange, as if someone was pressuring her. By the way, an interesting point. Oberyn Martell was initially supposed to come to Joffrey's wedding, but suddenly fell ill and sent Oberyn instead. Could Oberyn, a poison expert, have provoked his brother's illness symptoms? I think it's possible. Especially if Doran had his own vision of relations with the Lannisters, different from Oberyn's. And what about Joffrey?
Oh, careful, Your Grace.
We know he was poisoned by Lady Olenna with Littlefinger's assistance. The poison was hidden in Sansa's necklace, which was pre-made by Pater Baelish. But here's the question. Was Littlefinger a master of intrigue? Well, how well did he know poisons? It's possible that Oberyn helped him make the poison.
Your hatred for my family is rather well known. You spoke with Tyrion in this very brothel on the day that you arrived. Days later, my grandson dies of poisoning.
Remember where Oberyn went first upon arriving in King's Landing? That's right, a brothel. And that's Littlefinger's domain, practically his headquarters. Playing on 2 or even 3 fronts is Littlefinger's style. Perhaps he could have simultaneously served the Tyrells, helped Oberyn with revenge, and also secured Sansa, the key to the north. But was it just revenge? Or did Martell have a more global plan? The Dornish didn't aspire to the Iron Throne, but they could have made a secret alliance with the Tyrells.
You don't think I'd let you marry that beast, do you?
And perhaps even intended to support Daenerys, as they were always close to the Targaryens. But as we know, fate decided otherwise. All we discussed is, of course, just a theory. There is no direct evidence that Oberyn poisoned Tywin, was involved in Joffrey's poisoning, or was playing a larger game. But there is one thing that can be certain. Oberyn was no fool. He was an educated, intelligent, and calculating man. He was called the Red Viper, and it's not just a fancy nickname. Behind it stood a dangerous man who studied poisons all his life and knew how to win. But what was his main mistake? Oberyn was too confident. In fact, after the duel, I had déjà vu. Hadn't something similar happened before?
More wine, Your Grace.
Cersei, wine, King Robert, a boar. But instead of a boar, now the mountain. And instead of Robert, Prince Oberyn. Tyrion warned him before the fight.
You shouldn't drink before a fight.
You learned this during your years in the fighting pits.
A remark that seemed trivial at the time turned out to be prophetic. Alcohol.
I always drink before a fight.
It could get you killed. It could get me killed.
Slows reaction time, and in a critical moment, even a split-second delay can be decisive.
Say it!
If you liked the video, don't forget to like it and comment on what you think about the theory. Does it seem convincing to you? If you're here for the first time, be sure to check out other analyses of Game of Thrones characters. The links should appear on your screen as well as in the description.